Welcome to Lesson 3 on hope. In Lesson 1, I talked about awareness, looking at where you are in your life now, what you do and don't want, and being clear about your strengths. In Lesson 2, I explained some examples of how an addict can affect our lives in the present, how their actions can impact on us. In this lesson, I want to express how possible it is to get whatever it is that you seek. I know that can sound really out there and oh yeah, I suppose you've done it, but doesn't mean I can. But honestly, you really can. So whether that's letting go of something from the past, being able to speak up and feel more confident and self-assured, or maybe you want love. We do actually limit ourselves by our own thinking. We keep repeating to ourselves that we can't do something when it's just as easy to say, I can do something. So it's about changing how you're thinking and taking control of your thoughts. Often it's the how that stops us in our tracks. We immediately think that it isn't possible because often we don't know how to achieve it. But that doesn't mean that we can't achieve it, it's just we don't know how to do it. So let me tell you now, I'm the same as you. Someone that's experienced the difficulty of living with an addict. Someone that had no hope and felt unlovable. I thought that I would have been that person forever and never been able to change. I was desperately unhappy and I didn't know any different, but I knew things weren't right for me, and I suspect you know things aren't right for you. I couldn't put my finger on it, exactly what the problem was, but I knew that my relationships were suffering, friends had issues with me, I struggled with relationships at work, and I lived a very controlled and rigid life. I'd been in situations that would trigger things from my past, and I'd experience flashbacks as well, and I'd feel constantly on edge, and I absolutely hated the unknown. And I didn't realise that I needed to feel safe, but it came out of me in all sorts of ways, not in the most obvious ways. And the need to control everything and know everything about someone so that I could prepare myself for any possible fallout. And I think that the lengths that I went to were extensive, and it was so exhausting, but it was so normal to me, I didn't think twice about it. It was, it's just my normal. And I turned all of that around and more. I had a lot of issues, and you can too. So hope is a thing, and I'm here to give it to you. 20 years ago, I decided that, enough was enough. I needed some help, and my life had become a lot more difficult. And because I absolutely love fixing things, I knew that I had to do something about it. I knew I had to take action. I went to a therapist, and that's really the start of my self-development journey. I was able to move from, feeling low about myself to liking who I am. I had a lot of self-doubt, and I went from that to feeling, self-assured. I was very tactless, so I kind of went from being tactless to tactful. I had an inability to express myself to being able to be assertive. I went from hating myself to learning to love myself. And I went from saying yes all the time to saying no without any guilt. And I went from hating my own company to craving it. I compromised myself, and I went from that to being true to who I am and what was important to me. And I had no sense of self-care, and so I learned to prioritise myself. So you can get the idea that we can actually overcome what's happened to us, we can take the best of it and take anything that we've learnt forward and help to motivate us to change and to get what it is that we want. If you find that you get overwhelmed with the thought of change, which is quite normal, a lot of people feel that way, and you think that it's easier to stay where you are in the current situation you're in, or maybe you have no idea where to start, then I'm here for you. That's what these videos are all about. And from my experience, pretending that things aren't an issue, burying them, having your own addiction to ignore them, rarely works. I used to focus on everybody else's issues, which distracted me from my own. But the trouble with that is it does catch up with you, and it will affect you physically, in your body, and also emotionally. And we're not always consciously aware of it either. And also, because we're so used to things like that, we just think it's nothing. And I don't often meet people that have had difficulties in their past that can then just pretty much forget about them and it's not affected them in the present. I really don't know anyone that, over the years that's been in that situation. So when people think about change, it is scary. It's a natural human instinct to fear change. The familiarity of our comfort zones seems much better to us than the unknown, than something sort of out there that we don't know what it's going to be like. And our comfort zone actually isn't a place of safety, but a place of familiarity. And at one stage in our lives, there were those things that weren't familiar to us, and it's happened over a period of time. So with that in mind, trying something new, doing something different, is the same as what we've always done. It's just that we're conscious of it. And with it, and it's obviously we're conscious of it not being familiar to us. So now you've got some idea of where you are, what you want, and how it all came about, you can decide to move forward, which is a great place to be. So I want you to pick one thing that's the most urgent or important to you and focus on that. And whenever we look at something that is new and may seem out of reach or overwhelming, it's usually because we've just got a lack of knowledge and understanding about how we're going to achieve it. And I know that's happened to me with business things before, and it can be overwhelming. But that is okay, and we aren't meant to know everything. So I just want you to consider this, that years ago, there were probably things that you couldn't do, whether that's driving or whatever it might be. Situations you thought that you'd never overcome. Issues you decided that you wouldn't face. But I bet you there are a number of those things that you've achieved. So I know that if you're watching this video, then it's probably because you've lived with an addict, but you have survived it. And do you know what? That right there is a massive achievement, and I think one you should be extremely proud of. When we reflect on how far we've come, it can make us realise that we are more resourceful, capable, and stronger than we might have given ourselves credit for. And thankfully, we have obviously got a wealth of experience in the people around us, in our friends, in our family, in our colleagues, and obviously the world, the use of the internet and the universe that's full of resources. The key thing here is that we just need to remember to ask for help when we get stuck. And there's no shame in that, because as the saying goes, no man is an island. I know some people really struggle to ask for help, but it really is okay. In the last lesson, I'm going to be explaining about the techniques that I recommend to get you started. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in lesson 4. Take care, bye.